Alright, so I thought today's live stream we play around with this tool called BloodHound, which is one of my favorite tools for finding privilege escalation attack vectors in Active Directory environments. And we will take a look right here. You can go ahead and download BloodHound with Kali Linux. I think you can just do like a sudo apt install BloodHound. What's going on, Naomi?
Good morning.
Morning. Just a heads up, this live stream is being recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube. So just throwing a disclaimer out there because this will be my first stream where I do this.
All right. Are you going to watch up? I'll leave.
Oh, say again. All right, cool. All right, so yeah, you can install BloodHound this way if you want. I actually discourage installing BloodHound this way because you can actually get the latest and greatest binaries from GitHub instead. I will, of course, share this URL in the link in the description below where I post this live stream. And the important part about cloning, like if you're going to clone this, the way how I have mine set up is kind of weird. So here, take this for example. So if I go to like my tools directory, which is where I dump all my tools, I have this this directory called BloodHound. So really, I just did a clone, like git remote v. So literally I just took this URL right here and then cloned it, and you'll notice the directory structure is similar to what's here on GitHub. That said, the important part is in the ingesters directory, where you'll find some a SharpHound executable and a SharpHound PowerShell script. This is the most important one. SharpHound is a C# executable. I think you can also get SharpHound as a standalone if you go to look up SharpHound GitHub. Let's see, you'll probably get it here as well, SharpHound 3. But yeah, you probably get it here as well. But I pretty much just use this one right here. Works perfectly fine for my needs. And what else do you guys need to get set up here? Oh yeah, the other thing is you need the BloodHound executable. So to get that, you could probably build from source if you wanted, but I actually just go to tags and I go to downloads and get the latest release. Because I'm on Linux, I'm just going to go ahead and get the Linux BloodHound Linux x64 zip, and I just unzipped it, and you'll notice that my unstage changes here is I just unzipped this file right here. So if we go here, we have BloodHound, and you're gonna have to, like, you might notice this Chrome Sandbox executable is set with a sudo ID as root, and that's kind of a requirement for it to work. You can play around with it a bit more when you download it. So last but not least, you're going to need this weird service called Neo4j. It's basically a database where BloodHound is going to store all its data, and you can pretty much install Neo4j with sudo apt install Neo4j if you're on Kali Linux. So I'm just going to go ahead and start the Neo4j service. So here I have a services tab. Go sudo service. Actually, it's not a service. I lied. I think you go Neo4j. Okay, so I've installed Neo4j. So you go sudo Neo4j. You enter your password, sudo, and in this case we just want to go ahead and start the service because BloodHound uses this as a dependency. So sudo Neo4j start. Restart? Okay, I guess it's already running. Oh no, it started it. Okay. So if I go netstat nl less, it should already be running here, which looks good. Okay. So now I'm just gonna start BloodHound. So run BloodHound right here. And actually, because I'm gonna run BloodHound kind of like as a service in the background, I'm just gonna run it in my services tab here, which already happened to be there conveniently. So let's run BloodHound, and boom, you're gonna spawn this window right here. You are going to have to do a little bit of setup beforehand to set up your Neo4j username and password. I'm not going to cover that in this stream because it's pretty simple. You can just read the Neo4j documentation and set up yourself. So let's use Neo4j and a password. Let's log in. And this is your interface. So right now, you can have multiple databases associated with BloodHound. Right now, I'm just using the default one because all the data that I work with nowadays is pretty much just ephemeral. So there's no data right here. So that said, how about we go and collect some data? That's going to be step one. So for tonight's live stream, I prepared some hack the box machines because they already have an Active Directory environment ready in them. Hopefully there won't be any spoilers for anyone who plans on doing them, but they're all retired machines, so this is allowed to go up on the internet without me getting flagged for it. So the first machine that I'm going to get some data from is going to be this one right here. All right, so let's go back to live stream, HTTP live stream, BloodHound. All right, so I'm gonna take a look at creds. So I'm gonna be downloading data from Hack the Box Forest, and I'm gonna show you how to scrape data. When you're in an Active Directory environment, we're making the assumption that you already have an Active Directory account, and that you can go and read the Active Directory database. So in this case, we'll also assume that we'll have remote access to a machine. So I'm going to log in as one of the compromised users. I think we'll go evil tools, evil winrm, the RB. For those of you who don't know, evil winrm is a tool that you can use to PowerShell remote into a machine and run command line. And run PowerShell commands remotely. So we'll go user. It was like Melanie, and the password was, I believe it was like welcome123. That's the wrong one. The user was svcl fresco. Password was service, and the host was this guy right here. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to cover the steps for how you can go ahead and compromise this user. The point is to show BloodHound. So in this case, we have a documents directory. That's cool. However, we need to collect some data for BloodHound. So my favorite way to do that is I have this shared directory right here, and notice I just copied SharpHound, which is the ingester that I talked about earlier from GitHub, which is, again, is this guy right here, SharpHound.exe. And I'm just going to set up an SMB share. This is my favorite way to do it because when BloodHound ingests data, it writes to a zip file. And it's nice when you have that zip file already created on a share that is hosted by your attacking machine. So to do that, first we need to set up an SMB. We need to set up the share with SMB. So I'm going to use inpacket to do that. So for those of you who don't know, you can get inpacket from GitHub. Let's see, inpacket. I'll share a link to this in the video description below. But you are going to need this, and I'm basically using an example script. Inpacket is actually a library for SMB, and I'm just going to use the SMB server.py script right here. So I already have that in my tools directory, so I can go Python 3 tools, inpacket examples, SMB2 server, SMB. Okay, SMB server.py. And then I'm going to specify the share name. So the share name is going to be Rocket, and the actual share that we're going to share is called shared. Last but not least, because the forest box on Hack the Box is a relatively recent domain controller. I believe it's a Windows Server 2019. I'm going to try running system info on it. Access denied. But yeah, it's modern either way. So whenever you're dealing with modern Windows systems, like let's say Windows 10 plus, you will always want to use the pass the SMB2 support flag. And of course, you have to pass credentials as well, because anonymous access doesn't really work directly. At least off the top of my head, I don't know how to get it to work directly. So you can specify user and a password. So user rocket, password is hackit. And so if we run this as a regular user, it's going to fail because, as most of you probably know, SMB runs on port 445, which is a privileged port. So we are going to, we're going to run sudo python 3. And then it works. As you can see, if we run a netstat nlp, you'll notice that we have a service listing on port 445 now. All right, so let's link this machine to our attacker machine. So create a password, things like convert to secure string. So this is basically just the password, so hack it. And don't mind me, this is just PowerShell syntax that I memorized off the top of my head. So as plain text, and then force it. And then we're going to make a credential. So new object system.management.automation.ps credential. So the credential is pretty much the token that Windows uses to authenticate to a remote machine, and because we have a username and password, so where this credential here is going to be different from the one that we already have in our session. So name is rocket, and the password is our encrypted password. So pass. And now we're going to set up a new PS drive. Have the name be R. So the drive is pretty much just like a new drive. So you have like a C drive, D drive, F drive. I'm calling it an R drive because the shell I'm going to met is called Rocket. And I think it was like root. And then my hack the box IP address, which is on this ton0 address. So this is my hack the box IP over the VPN. So rocket, and then PS provider file system, and don't forget to pass the credential. Cred. So now you can see that we have successfully authenticated. I believe this is the net NTLM hash that's being passed in the handshake to authenticate, and this will take like a couple seconds before we can start writing to it. So come on. Okay, cool. So now we have our R drive. So we go cdr and do an ls. There's our SharpHound. Cool. So because we're on a domain controller, SharpHound does have some cool options that you guys should be aware of when running BloodHound. So if we look up SharpHound, notice it has enumeration options. So when you don't provide any enumeration option, it's going to run the default, which is going to do group membership collection, trust domain trust collection, local group collection, session collection, ACL collection, and all these other ones. So that's pretty good. We could also run, because we're on a domain controller, we could also run the DC only. So perform collection using LDAP only. So PStorm says, sorry to crash the video demo. Where do I pick up the video feed? Listening. What do you mean, where do you pick up the video feed? Because I'm streaming live. I think it should be on the video. Oh, you mean like, okay, I see, yeah. So Raban says YouTube, yes. I'm going to be uploading this stream to YouTube. Here, let me share my YouTube channel here, so you guys can check the upload once I finish. Let's see, YouTube.com. Sorry, I'm just Googling on a different window here so I can link my YouTube channel. YouTube Rocket. Let's see. Yep. So you can. Okay. So. Okay, so yeah, it's just a link to my YouTube channel. I'm gonna be uploading it through there afterwards. So if you guys can't stay for the remainder of this session, that's perfectly cool. Yeah, no problem, man. All right, so because I'm on a domain controller, I'm going to go ahead and try the running this with the DC only flag. Normally I run it with the defaults, and that's usually good enough, but I'm feeling adventurous tonight and we can try something new. If it doesn't give me the results I want, I'll just run it again with default credentials. So, let's see. So collection method. So we'll run SharpHound.exe collection method, and we'll use a DC only. See what happens. So again, this is over the network, so it might take a little bit of time to write the results to disk. Fail to parse collection method, election method. Okay, so what if we go help? Does this do anything? If this doesn't work, I'll probably just go run it with the default. That's normally how I run this, but I'm just playing around with it right now. Oh, cool! It actually worked. Okay, so oops. So collection method. So okay, it's -c. Okay, cool. So let's go back up. So we'll just go like -c DC only. Give it a shot. So I'm keeping this share up here because we'll probably see some activity go on here as it starts to write data. So it looks like it's doing stuff. Yeah, so the final data is in a zip file, and it should be writing it to our share. Cool. So if we do an ls, we notice that we now have the zip file. So let's go back to our Kali machine. So if we do an ls and shared, we notice that, hey, now we have the results. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy these results outside the shared directory in case this forest machine is compromised and someone might clobber my data. So that's why I'm doing this. Oops, shared 2020, oops. And actually I should copy it to here. Okay, cool. All right, so now that we have our data, let's go ahead and analyze it in BloodHound. So xdg open here. All right, let's go drag and drop this guy right here, the BloodHound processing file. Notice it's populating the database from this JSON. I say JSON because if we go and examine the contents of here, you notice it's like groups, users, computers, GPOs, domains.json. All right, so in this case, when we did our BloodHound ingestion, we compromised the SVC alfresco user. So if we go to BloodHound, this is normally where I like to search. And actually, let me take a step backwards. So you might be like, okay, well, why are you using BloodHound? Well, in Active Directory environments, you normally have multiple machines and you have a lot of users. The thing is, once you've compromised the user, the question is how do you pivot and escalate your privileges to a machine or a user that has higher privileges? And in Active Directory, when you go for the gold, you want to compromise the domain controller, which in our example here we're already on, But once you're on the domain controller, your goal is to get domain admin. So, and once you're domain admin, you pretty much have access to everyone's account in the entire Active Directory domain. So our goal tonight, at least in this example here, I have 2 more, is to see if we can become the administrator of the domain controller. In other words, the domain admin. And BloodHound will help us find the shortest path to get there. So let's start. We are SVC Alfresco. So let's search for the SVC Alfresco user. There we go. And we have this little guy right here. So when you use BloodHound, there are some practices that you can use to put you to an advantage. And what I like to do is I always like to mark the user as owned. And this is important because if we go to queries and let's do like find domain admins, for example. And if we go right click here, then you can right click on a domain admin and do shortest paths to here from owned. So if we do that, because we know that we own the SVC Alfresco user, we have now calculated a shortest path to the domain admin. Mind you, this isn't going to work on every domain controller because you may not have owned a user who is able to escalate the privileges through multiple paths to a domain admin. So let's examine this because it looks like we got a hit from the SVC Alfresco all the way to the domain admin. So let's refresh the layout. Refresh the layout again. Okay, I was hoping I could show this layout in a hierarchical manner. Okay, change layout to directed, change layout to hierarchical. Okay, well, this doesn't look so hierarchical to me, but anyways. Usually it looks a lot better, but anyways. So let's take a look at this. So we'll notice that our owned user, SVC Alfresco, is a member of the service accounts. And then we'll notice that the service accounts is a member of the privileged IT accounts, which happens to be a member of the account operators. And then what's interesting about this is the account operators.htb.local has a diamond beside it. And when you see a diamond like this, it usually means it's a, like in BloodHound, this means it is a high value target. So in the default queries, you might find the shortest paths to high value targets. If you can't find a path directly to domain admin, for example, you might want to go ahead and search for the shortest paths to the high value targets. And what's cool is you can right click on this and go edit node, and you might get a description of what you can do with this group. And in fact, this the account operators group says members can administer domain user and group accounts. So what that means is you can go ahead and add a user and possibly delete users. Probably not admin users though, because that would pretty much violate the whole idea of having an account operator, because at that point you might as well just be admin. So what's cool is like because you're part of the account operators, that means we have generic all privileges of the Windows Exchange permissions HTTP.local. So pretty much we could create an account and put them under the Exchange Windows permissions HTTP.local, which then we'll be able to have these write permissions, or these write DACL over HTTP local, and then ultimately become domain admin. So what does all that mean in a nutshell? So the write DACL here, basically we can via the account operators, we can create an account under the Exchange Windows permissions, and then with this write DACL, we can add to our user the ability to perform a domain controller synchronization. And when you synchronize a domain controller, you're effectively moving all the hashes from the Active Directory database to wherever you tell it to go to. And that's how you can become a domain admin. I'm not going to walk through that steps because the whole point of this stream is to show BloodHound. It's about BloodHound. So that's pretty much the default use case for how you might want to use this tool. And let's see what else we can do with BloodHound. All right, so that is example 1. I'm going to go ahead and show an example 2. So I'm gonna exit out of here, and I'm gonna shut down this machine so I can spin up another one. And by the way, I do have a Hack-to-Box VIP, which is the only reason why I am able to do this right here. So if you want to follow along with this live stream, you might want to get Hack-to-Box VIP. Here. So if I look for Resolute, start this guy right here. This is the next example I want to show. Let's copy the IP address while we're at it. All right. So exit. I want to get out of the. All right. Well, worst case scenario, I just killed the T-Mux Bane. All right. So it looks like we've deployed the machine to the lab. And let's go collect some more credentials. So I'm going to log on to the Resolute machine as the Melanie user. So tools, evil winrm, evilwinrm.rb. Let's go ahead and set the password. I was like, sorry, the user, Melanie. The password was welcome123. Notice I'm doing it in single quotes because the exclamation mark is a special bash character, which will ruin this command right here. Welcome123. And we'll put the host, which is this guy right here. Making a connection. Cool. All right. So we have Melanie again. I'm just going to go ahead and create the new PS credential thing like I did last time. So I think it was like password equals convert to secure string, hack it as plain text force, and creds equals new object system.management.automation.ps credential. Speaking while you're typing is kind of a mind twist sometimes. Rocket and pass. And last but not least, let's set up the drive. So new PS drive, name our root. Notice that running the same command over and over again, eventually you tend to memorize these things. 1010 1413 /rocket. Again, I'm connecting to the same share right here. Credential, creds. Oh, I forgot to specify the PS provider. It should prompt me shortly. Come on, buddy. I know you can make it. I know you can make it. Oh, in the meantime, if any of you guys in the chat have any questions about BloodHound and how you're trying to use it, and you might be like, oh, well, this isn't solving my problem, then what could I do? Then I am happy to answer that. Okay, this command is not behaving, so let's do a PS provider file system. Okay, much better. Much better. This command just needs to finish its timeout. Disconnecting. All right. Come on. Okay, cool. Let's go to the R drive. And I'm just going to run SharpHound again. So SharpHound C DC only. Oh, it was SharpHound.exe. So let's ingest some more data. So it's probably trying to write. All right, cool. So it looks like we have our new zip file. Do an ls. And this one here is the latest one. So before we do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and clear this database just so we don't have any like conflicting domain names or any conflicting Active Directory domains, I should say. So let's go clear the database. Yes, clear it. And let's go back to here. So I'm going to copy the shared, this guy here, and let's go import the data. So it was this one here. What was it 3940? Yes. Get in there. All right. So again, we're going to go through the same process. The user that we've owned was called Melanie. So Melanie. So first thing we're going to do, mark user as owned. And we go to node info, and then we can go to the other cool thing I like about BloodHound is this little menu here, reachable high value targets. So let's click on this right here. So Raban asks, which types of custom query do I use with BloodHound? So I am actually going to address that very shortly. That's actually the point of this this example that I'm giving. So I will show that in a second. So I'm getting no data right there. So it doesn't seem like there are many high target values from Melanie, which is like, okay, that's kind of iffy. So the next thing what we can do is to Raban's point, use some custom queries. And the reason why I'm going to use a custom query is because I want to list all groups. So I think there's a custom query here. List all groups of owned users. I just want to see all groups, which should be here somewhere. Is there Control F? Let me see. Groups. Come on. Where was it? List the groups of all owned users. Okay, well, let's see what happens here then. So that gives us some groups, but that wasn't what I wanted to show. I wanted to show all groups. So off the top of my head, I don't know how to write queries in BloodHound off the top of my head. Yeah, so you say, where do you get the custom queries? The ones that I've been using are from this guy right here, Howsec BloodHound custom queries. Because again, I don't know how to write BloodHound queries yet, but I'm learning. So I just decided, oh, well, I could just use this guy's. I'll post a link to this in the, actually I might as well put it in Discord, but I'll also share a link in the video description below. But yeah, you can get them from here. And if you want to go import them, you can pretty much just go to this little edit query button right here, and then just paste them in here. So I guess I can do Control F here, which is kind of useful. So groups, lists all the groups of, find what groups can RDP, find what groups can reset passwords, local admin rights. Oh, so show all high value targets groups. So I think that's probably a good one. Oops. Come on. Groups. List all groups of all users, RDP, that contain admin. Oh, actually, find all groups that contain admin. That'd be a nice one, actually. This one here. Here, let's use that one. Sorry it took me a while to find that. I need to find it right here. I wish there was like a Control F for this, for searching like the custom queries. Yes, there we go. Okay, find all groups that have the word admin in it. So, interestingly enough, all these groups that have the word admin in them are not marked as high value targets. Like, of course, domain admin is, enterprise admin is as well. But like, what about Hyper-V admins? What about enterprise key admins? Like, we could go ahead and learn more about these by right-clicking, go edit node. Members of the group have complete and unrestricted access to all features of Hyper-V. That sounds like pretty good because Hyper-V is kind of like, well, it's a hypervisor, so it probably needs system privileges to run, or at least people of that group might need very high privileges to do their operations. That said, you might be like, okay, well, which group of this is interesting to me? Well, we can do this, when you get to this point right here, that's when, if you're on a domain controller, I recommend you do a little bit more recon, or a little bit more enumeration on the machine that you're currently on. So in this case, I'm on domain controller here. So if I like list the users, we'll notice that, oh, we have Ryan on here, other than Melanie, so Ryan. The other cool thing about BloodHound that you could use, like that's one approach. The other approach that you could use with a BloodHound specific solution is find all users that logged in within the last 90 days. So I got no results from that query. So that's interesting. Normally, I guess 90 days is, because this is a retired machine, it's probably been more than 90 days since the last logon. So if we look at Ryan, his last write time was September 27th, 2019. So pretty much like a year ago. But in this case, what we care about is Ryan. So let's go and we're gonna check for this. Anyways, well, let's check for Ryan at megabank.local. Let's go to him. I'm not going to mark him as owned, but if we look at his info, we can see if we can reach a high value target, which is a no-go. The next thing we can check is the groups that he's part of. So this isn't quite returning what I was expecting it to. And I think it has, so this has to do with the way how I collected the data. Actually, no, I lied. Wait, what? Why isn't that working? It says you have 2 first degree memberships and has a link here that I can clear click and it says 2 and it gives me no data return from query. So sometimes it bugs out. When that happens, I just restart BloodHound. If that's not the case, then I'll probably just collect the data again using SharpHound but without passing any flags. So a little finicky sometimes. Let's go back to BloodHound, start again. Neo4j packet, the password. And let's search for Ryan again. Alright, let's click on him. That's okay. Let's go to first degree memberships, and now it works. Like, this is what I mean, like BloodHound can be really weird and finicky sometimes. So kind of odd. Anyways, we'll notice that he is part of the contractors at megabank.local and the domain users. So if we take a look at the contractors group, we can expand this as well. And I say contractors because this is a custom Active Directory group that was added. It's non-standard. It does take a while to learn what the standard Active Directory groups are. Like domain users is pretty standard. This one is not. So when you're doing privilege escalation, there's like a common rule of thumb that I like to abide by. And whenever you see something that's non-standard, it is suspicious, and it could very well be a good attack vector. So let's take a look at contractors. First degree membership. So contractors, what are you part of? You're a member of the remote management users, which explains why Ryan was able to log into the machine. And you're also part of the DNS admins. So if we go to DNS admins and we go edit node, it doesn't really have an interesting description, unfortunately, but whenever you see a group that has admin on it, I highly recommend you research it, because like in this case, there is an exploit that you can run if you are DNS admin to own the domain controller. I'm not going to spoil it for this video, but the important part is that this is actually a high value group, even though BloodHound didn't really recognize that originally. And then if we go to like shortest paths to here, you get this nice hierarchical path. So this is the hierarchical path I was talking about earlier that I was expecting, but for some reason it didn't render for me. So in this case we have Ryan, which happens to be a member of contractors, and contractors is a member of DNS admins. So if we were to mark this as a high value, like a high value target from the get-go, we would have been able to immediately map out this path right here. So possibly the best approach to that would have been to go to this custom query here. Where was it? This one here. Find all groups that have the word admin in it, and just go mark everything as high value. Go mark as high value. And then, like, if we wanted to look at, let's say, administrators, what does the dotted line represent in BloodHound? Let's go to the back. Good question. I actually don't know, but this above here says GP link, so it's probably something to do with like domain policies. But unfortunately, I cannot answer that question because I do not know. All right, so that's another example. Let's. I have one last example to show before I stop the stream, and that is. That is when you do not have remote access to the machine, but you have still compromised an account. So I'm going to use I'm going to go and stop this machine right here. Let's go stop Resolute. And if we go, the other one I want to show is Blackfield. Start this guy here. All right. So, all right. So let's exit out of here. Exit there. And this time, I'm going to use a different tool to ingest because, in this case, again, spoiler alert, but we'll assume that we've compromised the support user from Blackfield, where username and password. But this user doesn't have console access to the machine. So we're gonna use a different tool, and that's called BloodHound Python, which you can install with pip, or you can clone it from GitHub. I'll share a link to this as well in the video description below. But if you want to install it, you can go python 3 pip install BloodHound. That said, before you do this, there are some dependencies that you need to install first, and you can just read that in the description here. So yeah, I've already installed it, so I'm not going to run it again. But the command is python BloodHound once you install that, or BloodHound Python. BloodHound Python. And there are a few options right here. I can actually stop this SMB server because I don't need it anymore. So we're going to specify the collection method. The one that works best was DC only. And again, the collection method is important. If you are collecting Active Directory data from a domain controller, I highly recommend using this flag. So the username was support. The password was Black Knight. And make sure to put in quotes because I believe this is a special meta character in Bash. And last but not least, we need to provide the the domain controller host, which is 10.10.10.192. And we also need to provide the name server. So in Active Directory, normally the domain controller is also the name server that resolves the domain name. So in this case, I just know for a fact that the domain name is blackfield.htb. Or is either blackfield.htb or blackfield.local. We'll try both. And let's see if we got any more options here. Oh yeah. Actually no, it was D, not NS. Sorry. D for domain. The domain query. There's no NS here. This is the name server. Right here. Let's see. DNS. DC host, domain control host. I guess the DC host is the same, so we'll put that as well. And so this Python ingester, this BloodHound Python ingester is actually going to write direct data straight to disk. So I'm actually going to create a directory called Blackfield. Go to Blackfield and then run this command. DNS operation timed out. I guess it's blackfield.local. Specified domain controller looks like an IP address, but requires a domain name. I guess I just put NS. Okay, cool. So that's what I need to do. So yeah, just play around with this a little bit. Just make sure that you actually have a username and password, which represents an Active Directory user, and make sure you get the Active Directory domain right and the domain controller's IP address correct. Cool. So you'll notice that now we have like all these JSON files. If you want to analyze this for later, you can just pretty much cat everything and then pass it through JQ. If you want to see it in like a prettier format, just call this dump dot. Well, I'm not going to bother with it right now, but let's go and clear this database and then reset it. So let's go clear database. Clear database, yes please. I'm gonna actually restart it because I don't know. I have a fear that it's gonna bug out on me again. So neo4j, give the password. No data return from query, but let's go ahead and go to Blackfield. XDG open this guy, and we're gonna move all these JSON files into the database. Processing files. Amazing. Okay, so who did we own? We owned the support user. Let's go mark this guy as owned quickly. Mark user as owned, and then when you mark user as owned, the next thing that I like to do is select this guy for node info, and I like to go to the high value targets, but for some reason this guy is giving me 0, which is not what I was expecting. It was supposed to give me a result. Oh, never mind. There's still there's outbound object control, which means that this node right here, this object, he is able to directly control another node. So it looks like the support at blackfield.local is able to change the password of the audit 2020 account through the means of like a force change password. So we could go help right here. Like we could right click help, and actually to a Raban's question from earlier when you asked what does the dotted line represent in BloodHound, you could probably do the same thing that I did here. Just hover over this link, right click, and just go help. So the user support blackfield.local has the capability to change the user's password without knowing that current user's password. So that's a little gem right there. Abuse info, and you can get more information here. So if you're doing a real pen test engagement and you want to explain some technical details to your client, this is a great way to get some information for your report. I'm not going to go over this, but because simple enough, right? Change someone's password without knowing it. Then offset considerations, because when you do your pen test, you could potentially weaken the infrastructure if you don't revert things back to how they were originally, and you could potentially disrupt. So also as references. So that's really neat. A lot of research has went into this tool. So we'll assume that we can force change the password of audit 2020. So we'll assume that this guy is also owned. Let's own this guy, and let's click on the audit 2020. Let's see if we can get anything interesting from being the audit 2020 user. So unlike the support, this guy doesn't have any direct control over any other nodes. But let's see what kind of groups you're part of. So you're a domain user, cool. What else do you have? You're a domain user. You're a member of everyone. Users, authenticated user, pre-Windows, compatible. None of those groups are very interesting. That said, the next thing we can do is we can list all high-value targets. And we have a bunch of high-value targets right here. So domain controllers, admins, account operators. Account operator looks pretty interesting. So we could just go like shows paths them here, or shows paths them here from owned. No shows paths from owned, shows paths them here. Administrator, that's not too interesting because we don't have the administrator. So let's go back here. What about backup operators though? Let's right click this one. So I'm just kind of like noodling around right here at this point. Of course, again, when you do compromise a user and escalate your privileges, like you become audit 2020, you should go through your enumeration process again. Maybe this account has access to more SMB shares. Maybe they have more access to Active Directory. So you might want to run BloodHound again and ingest more data on behalf of this user. You might get more information. Let's go back to the high value targets. So let's check the backup operators. Shows past the here. So nothing interesting there. So there's an SVC backup user, which is interesting. So the SVC backup user is a member of the backup operators group. So this might say, oh, if this user here might become like an interesting target if you want to be part of this high privilege group. We'll notice that backup operators can override security restrictions for the sole purpose of backing up and restoring files. So if you back up if you make a backup on an Active Directory domain controller, you pretty much control the SAM and the system hives, which is pretty much, it contains information for getting all the users' hashes on that domain controller, and you can use those to completely dump the ntdis.dat file, which is actually the Active Directory database file. So that's so this guy here is a very interesting target. So we could click on him, and the question is there any shortest paths to this guy? Let's see. So the only direct path that BloodHound is aware of to becoming this user is through the admin. So it looks like you won't be able to become the SVC backup by abusing Active Directory groups. But again, always do your enumeration every time you re-enumerate all the time. Every time you change, every time you own a new user, re-enumerate. So that is pretty much my little demo on BloodHound for this evening. Hopefully you guys learned something new. I certainly had a good time playing with BloodHound in preparation for this demo. And if any of you guys have any questions, I am very happy to answer in the chat. Cool. Oh, and before I leave, okay, someone's still typing, but if you guys want to see a live stream on anything else, please let me know. Normally I just do live streams on what I'm currently learning, but if you guys have requests, I will take them into consideration. All right, so it looks like there are no questions. Remember, I will be sharing a link to the stream on my, a link to this video on my YouTube channel. So for those of you who missed it, you can go ahead and watch it up there. And other than that, I'm going to call it a night here.